Bhagavad Gita, as it is, by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Well, I woke up this morning after having a really strange dream. It was a really strange dream, although I understand it. I was finding vegetables like sweet potatoes and squash and other things that had been thrown in the trash as useless. And I was pulling them out and cleaning them up, and they opened up a little vegetable stand, which I gave to someone else to sell those vegetables, which look pretty good now that they've been cleaned up. It's kind of a strange dream, although I understand it. I understand that. It's interesting. But it was definitely a dream. But it was very real when the dream was taking place. It was so real. It was like, yeah, I totally get this. And I was experiencing different emotions of success in taking something that was others had thrown away and was useless and making it into something nice, and then not even trying to enjoy it for myself but giving it to someone else. And then yeah, it was a nice dream. But when I woke up, it went even further, because I realized finally, again, until I forget again, and after hearing for like over 50 years from authoritative sources that this life is a dream. The whole thing's a dream. The songs of the Acharyas and the great Vaishnavas, you know, I think this is my house, I think these are my family, I think this is my business, I think this is my body. It's all a dream. It's a dream. Why? Because it's temporary. Reality is eternal. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. But a dream does. So it's a dream. It's not that it doesn't exist. It exists, but just like a dream exists, it's not that the dream doesn't exist. It does. But it's a dream. That's what exists. And so trying to solve all the different problems within the dream, it doesn't solve anything. The only solution is to wake up. And then ultimately, now that I'm getting into old age, the dream is turning into a nightmare. Nothing works right. Everything's difficult. Everything hurts. The body is not cooperating. And so the dream is not like an exciting, wonderful dream. It's like, oh my God, this stupid nightmare is going on here. But it's a dream. It's a dream. So it's imperative to hear about Krishna, Krishna's pastimes, to hear about the spiritual world, what it's like, what's going on there, the personalities there, and to understand that this life is temporary. It's absolutely. That's the whole Bhagavatam. Parikshit Maharaj, he realized that he had been cursed by a Brahmin a boy, Brahmin boy, but he had powers of cursing. Oh, those good old curses, they fly. Mahabharata and Ramayana, everyone's always cursing everyone by the power of their austerities. So thankfully nobody has any power of austerities these days because everybody's really fallen. So the cursing is kind of like, it's not on the table so much. The whole thing's cursed. Kali Yuga. But back then, you're going back over 5,000 years, by the power of austerities. So Maharaj Parikshit had been cursed. He knew he was going to have to leave his body. He was the emperor of the whole planet. He was going to die in 7 days. So he stopped everything. And he said, what is the duty of someone who is about to die? In other words, this dream is about to end. How do I wake up? I can't stay in this dream anymore. The dream is over. What's the actual reality? I want to prepare. I don't want to have to stay asleep and have another dream and have that end and then another dream and then stay in this dreamlike state. What is the duty of someone about to awaken, about to have that dream, that bubble burst? And that was the Bhagavatam, to hear Bhagavatam. And Sukadeva Goswami arrived right on time. You asked the magic question. Here I am with the magic answers. Krishna. So what's that old song? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. It's not to be frivolous within the dream. If you're in the dream, there's duties to perform. It should be conducted nicely, peacefully, in the streamlike state, which helps to prepare for when the dream is over, without getting reactions and bringing a dream of suffering. But to get attached to the dream, if it's really, really nice, the results of much pious activity in the past, digging wells, giving in charity, in a previous dream, and you get to have a successful dream of wealth and power and family members, loving family members, but it's also a dream. Mode of goodness is also a dream. It doesn't last. And sometimes it's harder when someone's in this really great dream. They don't want to wake up because the dream is so nice. No, don't tell me this is a dream. I'm enjoying it too much. But it's a dream. The real life is beyond this temporary world, beyond this material world. So, let's hear from someone who's awake. I'm accepting that that's the goal, is to be awake. I'm trying to go in that direction, even though I'm still more asleep than awake. But at least I know who's awake, and that is A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, fully awake, fully Krishna conscious, no dreams here. Hare Krishna. So, discussing here in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, as it is, about the senses and sense gratification and how that keeps us in this dreamlike state. Those that don't have such a great life, they may see others with a great life, and then they hanker for that, so that's, they want that kind of a dream. So that's it's still the dream stuff. Whether you already have it and you're enjoying it, or you see somebody else with it and you want it, it's all fairy tale, sleepy time stuff. This life is a dream. For some, a good dream, and for others, a nightmare. It's a dream. So this is toward the end of the second chapter, contents of the Gita summarized, and Krishna has been discussing with Arjuna, who's tending to fall into this dream, that these are my family members. I have to fight with them, and I don't want to. A kingdom, what would I do with a kingdom? On the heavenly planets, if I'm killed, or here on earth, who wants a kingdom? I don't know what to do. So Krishna is waking him up. It's a dream. It's a dream. It's a dream. And here's how he's doing it. He's been discussing about controlling the senses. The senses drag someone in this dreamlike state. They have to be engaged. He was discussing that in the previous verse. The senses, they have to be engaged. If they're engaged in Krishna conscious activity, Krishna conscious action, then they become purified and they don't entangle the person more in the dreamlike condition. They bring one into consciousness of Krishna. Wake up from the dream. So, here we go. This is text 69. Krishna says, Ya niśā sarva-bhūtānāṁ tasyāṁ jāgarti saṁyamī yasyāṁ jāgrati bhūtāni sa niśā paśyato muneḥ. What is night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. Prabhupada's commentary, there are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective. And awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage, or thoughtful man, are night for persons materially absorbed. They see it as a waste of time. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. Oh my goodness, I woke up thinking about being in a dream, and I really didn't know that this verse was about that. I didn't know that that was what this verse would be about, is being awake and being asleep, the night and the day, and the different intelligences, who's asleep and who's awake. I didn't know this verse was going to be about that. Actually, this is not uncommon in Krishna consciousness, that something is, realization comes, and then you read something and it's about that specific thing. It's not uncommon. So here we are. Activities of the introspective sage or thoughtful man are night for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic men. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy, sometimes distressed in his sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with self-realization activities undisturbed by material reaction. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, text 70. Do I dare? Apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudram apa pravashanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravashanti sarve sashantim apnoti na kama kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. The incessant flow, like rivers that enter into the ocean. The rivers don't disturb the ocean. The ocean's too big, too vast. Prabhupada's comment: although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it's always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It's not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. As long as one has a material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. Yeah, I remember the example I used to hear all the time is of a glass. And if it's filled with milk or water or something, anything, the glass is filled, there's no room for anything else to get in there because it's already full. If it's only has a little bit, then there's a lot of room, and the air and the atmosphere and whatever can fill the rest. So if someone's filled with Krishna conscious, filled, their activities, their thoughts, they're engaged in Krishna's service, Krishna consciousness, remembering Krishna, praying to Krishna, taking shelter of the devotees of Krishna, trying to serve spiritual master, they're engaged in Krishna consciousness, the glass is full. There's no room for the outside atmosphere to get in, the maya, the material, to get in, because it's full. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities. He's not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification. Although desires are present, now that material sense gratification that also refers to sex desire. These are full of Krishna consciousness, so that backs off. Even though Prabhupada says the desires may come, but they don't disturb the devotee. Because he remains satisfied in transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruit of workers, the salvationists, and the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord and has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, therefore they are in perfect peace. They have desires to serve Krishna, not material desires for sense gratification. Although those desires are there, they don't try to fulfill them. Krishna fulfills all the desires of his devotees. So they depend on Krishna, and Krishna fulfills those desires in such a way that they're free from material bondage. Krishna. Text 71. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Sanskrit for that is Vihaya kamanya sarvan pumam charati nishpriha nirmamo nirahankara sa shantim adhigacchati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, is devoid of false ego. He alone can attain real peace. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, therefore everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense gratification, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought, because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Desire for the satisfaction of Krishna is really desirelessness. It is not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, Ishvashamidam sarvam, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over everything, over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization. Yes, reminiscent of the false renunciation. You don't own anything to begin with, so what is there to renounce? Real renunciation means to use everything for Krishna. You don't own anything anyway, so how can you renounce anything? If you don't own anything, what do you renounce? You don't have anything to renounce. If you think you own it, you're a thief. So, like the person who goes into a department store and tries to walk out with a big screen without paying. Security guards come, wait a minute, you didn't pay for that. And they're about to arrest him for thievery. And he says, I renounce this big screen TV. I renounce. What's to renounce? You didn't own it to begin with. You tried to walk out with it. You tried to steal it. You don't own it to begin with. So this false renunciation, I renounce, whatever it is. You don't own anything to begin with. Everything's meant to be used for Krishna. That's real renunciation, because Krishna is the owner. What is it? Another little illustration. A man drops his wallet in the street, and it has a lot of money in it. So one person may see the wallet and take it and steal it. He's a thief. Another person sees the wallet and he doesn't want to touch it because he knows it belongs to somebody, and he just leaves it there and walks on. Another person comes, he picks up the wallet, looks inside, and he sees identification. Oh, this belongs to so-and-so. He finds the person and returns the wallet to him. That's like the devotee. They know, they find that everything belongs to Krishna. Oh, I have to give it to Krishna. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is the part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity. And therefore, the eternal position of a living entity is never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely, knowing perfectly well that every living entity is the eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and therefore the eternal position of the living entity is never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding, Krishna consciousness, is the basic principle of real peace. Yeah, so the dream state is not knowing that, is the ignorance of not knowing that every living entity is eternal part and parcel of Krishna. You see things separately. Like, I was working in an Indian motel on the night shift for a little while, years ago. And Mr. Patel, I got a job for a friend to come and work at the motel too. But it turned out working together, as friends we got along, but working together didn't work out very well. We couldn't get along working together. Our moods were entirely different. She was very authoritative. Her name tag was a badge of authority. And the people who were coming to me all the time complaining, she was rude, she did this, she that, they would come and complain to me. So she was a little, like, how should we say, bossy. She got a name tag and now she had authority. It's kind of funny now that I look back on it. But we couldn't get along very well working together. So needless to say, that friendship kind of dissipated. But the boss had to call us in. Mr. Patel called us into the office to have a meeting. And the way he explained it is, held up his hand. And he said, you see this hand? You see the fingers? They're all connected. They have to work together. He said, it's not like this. You look like this, they look separate. You don't see, oh, they're not connected. They look different, they're separate. He said, but you look like this, you see, oh, they're connected. He says, we have to work together. So the ignorant sees everything as separated, each individual. This one's the cause of my problem, and that one, and this, it looks separate. But with awake to Krishna consciousness, understanding everyone's part and parcel of Krishna, it's like this. Oh, we're all together, we have to work together. All part of the same body, Krishna. And that is the basic principle of real peace. Every living entity is eternal part and parcel of Krishna. Text 72. Esha brahmi stiti partha nainam prapya vimuyati shtitvasyam antakale pi brahma nirvanam richati. That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. How important is it? Being so situated, even at the hour of death, when the dream is over, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Prabhupada's commentary, one can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second. Or one may attain such a state of life, may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It can be attained in a second, or even after millions of births, not attained. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Khatvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. The Khatvanga Maharaj is described that he asked sage, he said, how long do I have to live? And the sage said, only another minute. He was consulting somewhere. He says, you only have one more minute to live. Immediately he surrendered to Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life, but Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there's another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There's no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and devotional service of the Lord. One more time. There's no difference between the kingdom of God and devotional service of the Lord. Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities for sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. How powerful devotional service is. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Devotional service is the mercy of the spiritual master. That's the mercy of the spiritual master. As the foremost servant of the Lord, he is empowered to engage others in devotional service also. Hearing, chanting, remembering, worshiping, offering prayers, serving the lotus feet, carrying out the orders, and offering everything that one has in the service of the Lord. The spiritual master, under the guidance of the spiritual master, that's his mercy, is he gives this devotional service. He himself being fully engaged in devotional service. Brahman is just the opposite of matter, therefore brahmastiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in Bhagavad Gita as a liberated stage, therefore brahmastiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. The Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are karma, yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. In the second chapter, karma yoga and jnana yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of bhakti yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. Let's end the Bhaktivedanta purports, the second chapter. So that's why this chapter is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga are all presented in the second chapter. Now, for a more detailed discussion of Karma Yoga, chapter 3. And Karma Yoga will be discussed in great detail. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Oh Krishna, am I dreaming?